If you're here, you likely want to see the full build process for this DIY hidden dartboard setup. But if you just stumbled onto this video and you're more interested in a quick 5-minute overview rather than a full step-by-step process, well, I've got you covered. I made a separate show and tell version, which I'll link up here. That one keeps it short, sweet, without all the build details. But if you're here because you want to see exactly how this was built, well, let's get started. Because this isn't going to build itself, y'all. Hey guys, welcome to the General's Workshop. Let's take a little trip back in time. If you remember, when I was building my loft, I originally had some generic black pipe on the back wall, right? This little area here. And it did the job. But let's be honest, I was honestly never in love with how it looked. And at the same time, I knew that I wanted to add a dartboard to the space. So that's when the idea hit me. Why not use the two beams from my loft build and create a hidden cavity between them? From here, I started thinking about how to make it look more intentional. Something that actually fit the rustic aesthetic that I wanted. Now, that's when the idea of a kind of in-wall retractable dartboard was born. But here's where things got tricky. At first, I considered using a channel strut with a trolley-based system to make it slide smoothly up and down. But let's be real, I'm no finished carpenter. For me, I was worried about even just having a slightest bit of out of a square would kind of cause that whole system to bind up and it would make it kind of clunky. And let's be honest, at the end, I thought it was just a way for me to over-engineer something yet again. So the other alternative that I really thought long and hard about is going to be doing more of an attachment system where I had wooden dowels connected here in the middle, that this whole piece would swing up and out and then come up top here. Now, one of the challenges for me with that is, right, when you look at this is just over 3 feet, so that's 3.5 feet. That means that that's going to have to swing 3.5 feet to come out and all the way up. Now, not that that would be a horrible thing, but the reality is if you've watched my channel for any length of time, you know that during the holiday seasons, I have a large Christmas tree that goes here. And to be quite honest with you, I really don't know how I'm going to totally end up with this space in the long run. So this causing that need for clearance, I just didn't think it was worth it. Whereas the system that we do have now makes it quite a bit easier because it goes straight up and down and doesn't need that overall safety kind of space, if you will. I finally scrapped both of those ideas and went with something much simpler. Instead of fancy hardware, I just built a guide channel using blocks of wood that I already had on hand. And you know what? It worked. So in this video, I'm going to be walking you through exactly how I built it step by step. So let's get started. You guys don't need to watch me cut plywood. You've seen that plenty of times on YouTube. But one thing worth pointing out is this little notch at the bottom of the sheet. That's there because I had to make some clearance for the hardware at the bottom of the post. After that, I just nailed down, or actually fastened with screws, some basic lumber stock to form kind of that outer edge, if you will, of the channels. Now, one key step was getting the plywood up into place first so that I could accurately mark where to cut the hole. On the backside, you'll notice that I cut a circle out of the 3/4 inch plywood and then mounted a 1/4 inch sheet behind it. The reason for that is simple. It compensates for the dartboard's 1 inch thickness, keeping the front and the back protruding at just a 1/4 inch. Now, technically, I could have mounted the dartboard directly to the 3/4 inch plywood, but it would have actually had clearance, but just barely. And that wouldn't have left room for me to add the hook for the alternate dartboard, which you'll see in the future video. All right, so you can kind of see it. I've got the fence board. I'm not going to be using these ones, but I just wanted to use them as an example. So I'll do a kind of a fresh, clean cut right here, followed by putting another like 2x6 like ish board like this out and down. So this comes in and butts into that joint. I like the idea of flaring or having the base of the post be a little bit thicker. So I'm going to add another one of this dimension here down, as well as here down, to create some accent. And then I'll maybe do like a top piece at a little bit of an angle. And I'll do that over there as well. I've got the boards over here that are drying, getting ready. I'll kind of thickness plane those tomorrow. And then I'll go ahead and get this side done as well. it is going to be awesome. In woodworking, equal border layout basically is just something that ensures that the top and the bottom of the design have kind of equal width spacing, if you will, or pieces, creating a balanced and a more intentional look. Now, in my particular case for my rustic wall, this means that I'm adjusting my panel width so that the top and the bottom piece are relatively or actually the same size, rather than ending up with an uneven or an awkward end kind of cutoff, if you will. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, at this point, I was just trying to figure out the best way to fasten my dartboard to the plank. I removed all the standard fasteners on the back because it made the board sit just a little too proud, or at least away from the backer, and I needed it to be flush against this 1/4-inch backing. To solve this, I used a simple 2x4 approach and held in by clamps and in place while driving the screws from underneath, ensuring that there was no gaps between the dartboard and the wood itself. For those of you that are unfamiliar with edge banding, this is basically a raw plywood edge covered with a thin veneer, and that veneer actually has an adhesive on the back of it. Now, I'm using an iron to melt that glue, allowing it to bond to the edge for kind of that crisp, clean, finished look. I'll be applying this to all the edges. If you've watched my other videos, then you know that I love the mahogany gel stain from Varathane. It works great on wood, honestly, metal, fiberglass, and a lot more. I especially love that rich, deep color, and I honestly prefer the gel stain versus the alternatives because it doesn't drip and it doesn't run, which makes it ideal for applying on vertical surfaces, though in my particular case this is horizontal, so it's less of a concern at this point. Now, to apply, you just spread an even layer, let it sit for about 3 to 5 minutes, and then you wipe off the excess with a clean, soft cloth, always in the direction of the wood grain. For drying time, wait at least 2 hours before recoating, or a minimum of 8 hours before applying your top coat. At this point, I needed to stop the backer board from swaying back and forth. I actually used the same furniture fasteners from my ship ladder build, and they worked perfect. I also added small L brackets, though I had to slightly bend them and drill the end hole for a little bit better fit. I started by anchoring the fasteners to the backer board and then secured the L brackets to the posts. All right, you guys, so here's my challenge. I need to make something like this. Now, this is obviously isn't the right size bolt. I actually need a 1/4 20 with this, and I want it like this so that I can use my hand without requiring any sort of a tool, an Allen wrench, a screwdriver, or anything of that nature. So here was my challenge. When I went to my local box store, i.e. Home Depot, I was able to find the 1/4 20 in just a little bit longer than what I needed, but they did not have any of these. So what I'm gonna do is I wanna attempt to make my own. So I bought these 1/4 20s. These are 1 inch long, and we're gonna use some hot glue, and let's see if we can make them. So come on a little bit closer here. So I like the shape of that. That's about the same size. So let's see if that will actually work. Need to keep that. You know what I might do? Kind of creates a seal, if you will. There we go. We're gonna do that, get a little bit of an angle. There we go. So at this point, I'm just figuring things out as I go, especially with this thumb screw. I saw something like this a long time ago, and I've honestly been wanting to try it for a while. So I'm just experimenting in real time with you guys. They say that necessity is the mother of all invention, right? Well, in this case, a little trial and error paid off because it turned out better than I expected. Actually, the toughest part was actually removing the thumb screw once it was actually fully cooled down. After some trial and error, I found that the best method in my particular case was pressing it against a corner of the countertop, rocking it back and forth like a seesaw to break it free from its hold. Simple, yet effective. All right, guys, on my first attempt, I didn't have any sealing at the bottom of the backer board, which left this small gap leading into the channel below. Now, everything seemed fine until that first dart that didn't stick dropped straight down and disappeared into the gap forever, never to be found. That's when I knew that I needed a fix. Now, at first, I considered adding just a piece of wood, but then I called my go-to creative engineer, Gearhead. He suggested using some kind of a metal material. That's when I realized that I had a leftover piece of this garage door stripping, this weather stripping from another project. So I gave it a shot, and lo and behold, it worked perfect. Not only does it function well, but I love how the black rubber adds to the look. When hanging down, it gives off this rustic touch. It fits right into my shop, and most importantly, no more lost darts. That's a win in my book. As most of you already know, anytime that you have something that you have to spend an extensive amount of time finding it and or setting it up, well, you know that the likelihood of performing that said activity is greatly reduced. And that is why having this hidden dartboard, which can deploy in seconds and retract when you're not in use, has just been a game changer of fun. I've so enjoyed utilizing this, and it's actually only been up for a couple of weeks, and even at this point we've used it multiple times. I'm confident that this is going to provide a significant amount of awesomeness for when we do game nights or things of such. And actually the next video that I've got queued up for you here is a wickedly awesome rendition of custom woodworking combined with paper football. So grab your favorite football team, your helmet, and loosen up those flicking fingers, because this next video is going straight to the Super Bowl.